I just participated in the 32-bit Summer Jam from July 5th to July 26th, and I made all the audio for the team behind Rockin' Walkman. Here's how it went. So I was scrolling through Itch and I saw the jam and I thought, oh, that's exactly my thing, that's in the channel description. And I hopped in the Discord. After a while of scouting for the right dev to collab with, I hopped on a team led by a dev named Garf. To be clear, this is far from my first game jam. I've been doing game jams for a good while now, and I have a pretty good idea of how jams usually go. First, get together in a Discord and wait for the theme or restriction announcement. And upon hearing that theme, plan the most elaborate impossible game possible. We're talking Baldur's Gate 5 here. Then, spend the first half of the jam realizing how grossly we overscoped, and realize you don't even have the very core mechanics done, and you're halfway through the jam. Then, compromise and crunch and definitely don't sleep until you have something resembling a video game. Submit. Luckily, that didn't happen this time. So a big focus for me and the whole team this jam was keeping scope in mind, and making something simple that we can polish to a shine rather than something complicated that barely works and doesn't feel good to play. And I'm sure some of you might be saying, Jaden, you have from the 5th to the 26th for this jam. I think you have the time to give it a bit of scope. No. You don't understand. I've seen jams go sour in ways you can't even imagine. I've watched teams fall apart like things, and all I can do as the audio guy is watch and make a sound effect for when you land on the ground. So, as is tradition for game jams, those that could stayed up and waited for the ridiculous time of night that the secret theme would be revealed, and brainstormed ideas. The existing optional theme was radio and waves, and of course the whole game jam was themed around the 90s era of gaming. After bouncing a bunch of ideas back and forth, we settled on this pitch. It's a platformer where you play as a radio guy who's always playing music. You can swap what radio station you're listening to, and each station will give you attributes corresponding to that genre. So the drum and bass station makes you run fast and jump far, but the ambient station makes you slow and floaty. The secret theme, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, was revealed, and that solidified that this was the idea to pursue. We settled on an open 3D platformer with one large level with smaller challenges within, a la Bowser's Fury. We did this to keep scope reasonable and our team's strong points and interests in mind, and then we began on the 5th. I had my work cut out for me with this game idea. It was all about the music. Not at all an afterthought like most game jam games treat audio. In this game, the audio drove the gameplay. I was sure to suggest and pick genres and abilities that I can actually create, like D&B, hip-hop, and chill, pretty music. The first thing I did was draft the D&B theme. It was important that the drums were always breaking it down to match the speed of the gameplay no matter when you switch to the station, so arrangement kind of became an issue. I was going in feeling confident, especially after I had just made 2 Jungle-esque songs I was pretty happy with, and I was quickly humbled. After a lot of scrapped ideas, I started with this idea, with me chopping up and pitching the amen break, and doing a cool descending progression over it. And I wasn't that into it. It has some stuff I thought and still think is pretty cool, but it didn't really come out how I'd wanted it to, and unsurprisingly the lead dev felt basically the same way. If you're wondering what that dud D&B track sounded like, well, you're listening to it right now. So, feeling a bit defeated after all those failed attempts, I redirected to the ambient floaty track. I can make this sort of song in my sleep, the type of song with pretty harmony and a nostalgic sort of sound. And make it in my sleep I did. I made the first draft for the song in like an hour and a half, and finishing it didn't take too much extra effort. Listen to that ocarina. Listen to that waterphone. Familiar, right? Discuss. Anyways, after this, I returned to the D&B track, starting a new, simpler idea, and this one worked out. Sequenced Bomberman Hero drums with layered pads playing a big chord, and then playing that big chord again, down a whole step, which is a very jungle thing to do, pitch around a chord. Throw in a bunch of stupid vocal samples, amen break because I couldn't resist, and a B section, and bam, the DMB track was good. It was after this I asked if it'd be cool if I integrated the audio into the game myself, rather than just handing off audio files for them to be put in the game, and they said sure. And here's where I'd like to talk about the part of being a VGM composer or game audio guy they never teach you or talk about. This is the eating your veggies of video game audio for me, and it feels like there are very few resources online on how to learn how to operate game engines, integrate sounds, and collaborate on GitHub from the perspective of a composer. And yet, it feels like such an expected skill for video game audio people, and a very useful one for indie devs who'd much rather hire one guy for sound and integration rather than one guy for each. Most tutorials and lessons that do exist are teaching programmers who are already familiar with programming and their game engine how to add audio, rather than dumb composers who want to add audio to a game they didn't program. And the last thing you want to do as a composer is overstep your boundaries and mess up the game's code or systems in an attempt to add audio. And that fear stopped me from trying for a long time. But through this project and many questions to one of our programmers and designers, Eelshep, I learned a lot about audio integration, Godot, and GitHub. And at some point when I really get this aspect of my craft under my grasp, I'd love to make a video to teach fellow people in this situation. In reality, I didn't really integrate it. I really just put the assets in the system and adjusted mixing once Eelshep actually integrated the audio to play how I asked. Anyways, after making the DMB track and the ambient track, the next track on the docket was the hip-hop track, which is the first station you get and lets you double jump. After realizing I had no strong ideas for how this track should sound or how to accomplish the inspiration I did have, I directed my focus to sound effects. I made UI sound effects that sound like a Walkman or cassette player being operated, and this fun hover sound that picks randomly between the 5 notes of B pentatonic, inspired directly by Peggle. I made perhaps the most important sound effect, the effect that plays when you swap stations, and I also described the music system I'd like, which Eelshep executed perfectly. In short, have everything always playing, have the music playing even when you're not on the station and can't hear it, just like a real radio station. Then, I finally tackled the title theme. I had a very clear vision for exactly how I wanted this to sound. Funky, energetic, bluesy, and grapple dog. Yes, this song is very likely too much inspired by Jazz Mickle's work on Grapple Dog, and of course, Hideki Naganuma's work on Jet Set Radio. I got a drum sample from Skip to My Loops, some FM bass and brass. I played in some bass to thicken it up, flips, blops, saxophone, and I threw in a bunch of vocal samples, and it was done. Now, finally, after that, I finally tackled some more sound effects. And then the hip-hop station, which, like the DMB station, had plenty of duds before landing on something I was happy with. I took some drums from Sonic CD, played a bass line in and treated it like a sample, looping it and chopping it at points, sampled some vocals using vocalremover.com, and of course, threw in a bunch of vocal samples, mostly from 0G data file. Hip-hop was done. Then, I did a bunch more sound effects, and because this game is so audio focused, I wanted a lot of the sounds in the game to be inherently musical. So I proposed a system where some sound effects would pick between variations, depending on which station you're on. For instance, the jump sound effect changes to match the tonality of each station's song, and the DMB station has this footstep loop in time with the music. Eelshep implemented this all perfectly as usual. Then, I made the tutorial theme, where I completely stole the vibe of the classroom and pause theme from Mario Strikers Charged, as well as the tutorial theme in Rivals of Aether. I played more bass. I like the bass. Something that can be a point of stress in game jams is the fact that often to make good sound effects, you design them to the animations. And when time is so limited, getting animations late can spell crunch for the sound designer. Luckily, his team was fire, and I got the animations and mechanics with enough time to design the rest of the sounds. Here are some of my favorites. This was one of the smoothest and most successful game jams I've been a part of in a while, so thank you for the team for making a great game, the organizers for organizing a great jam, and thank you for watching. You can play the game from the link in the description. You can play on keyboard or my preference, controller.